Hello there. It's nice to have you back. The universe has a very peculiar way of clearing its throat before it speaks. And usually, we are too busy checking our watches to notice the vibration under our feet. Imagine, if you will, that the calendar is not a grid of appointments, but a countdown that has been running since the first hydrogen atom decided it was lonely. We find ourselves drifting toward the final sunset of December, specifically the 30th day of December, 2025. On the surface, it is a Tuesday, a day for lukewarm coffee and moderate expectations. But if you look at the telemetry coming from the Deep Space Network, the data suggests that the cosmic curtains are about to be pulled back, revealing a stage we never realized we were standing on. Astronomers have spent decades cataloging the quiet dark. Yet recently, the telescopes have begun to blink. There is a subtle, persistent anomaly in the gravitational lens near the orbital path of the 3I Atlas object. It should not be there. By all laws of Newtonian physics, the space between the stars should be empty and silent, yet the sensors are picking up a hum, a low-frequency oscillation that feels less like a rock tumbling through a vacuum and more like a heartbeat echoing in a cathedral. What if our understanding of a wandering comet is merely a polite misunderstanding of a visitor? This brings us to the myth of the Great Return, the ancient idea that every few thousand years, the sky demands an accounting of our progress. We are small creatures on a damp blue marble, trying to calculate the weight of infinity with math scribbled on napkins. It is a humbling thought, perhaps even a funny one, that the entire history of human civilization might just be the opening act for a celestial event we are only now beginning to name. As you settle into your blankets, I invite you to leave a comment telling me what time it is and where you are in the world as you listen to this. Whether it is midnight in London or dawn in Tokyo, we are all currently sharing the same thin layer of oxygen. But as we look toward the 30th of December, we must ask, are we watching the sky, or is the sky finally watching us back? The air feels sharp and dry as we begin our journey into the technical heart of the mystery, standing metaphorically within the chilled dome of an observatory high atop the Atacama Desert. You are surrounded by the smell of ozone and the faint, rhythmic whirring of cooling fans, a sound that serves as the heartbeat of modern discovery. We are looking for 3I Atlas, an object that defies the traditional nomenclature of our solar system. When we speak of interstellar visitors, we often think of them as jagged, lonely shards of ice, but 3I Atlas behaves with a strange, almost polite intentionality. It does not tumble, it glides. As we track its trajectory toward the pivotal date of December 30th, we notice that its velocity is not being governed solely by the sun's gravity. There is a secondary influence, a phantom pull, that suggests the object possesses a density far exceeding what should be possible for its size. Imagine you are holding a pebble that weighs as much as a mountain. That is the mathematical paradox we are facing. In the early weeks of November 2025, the European Space Agency recorded a series of thermal spikes emanating from the object's trailing edge. These were not the chaotic outgassing events of a melting comet, but rather precise, rhythmic pulses of heat. It is as if the object is breathing in the cold of the void and exhaling a calculated warmth. If we assume for a moment that nature does not build rhythmic heaters in the vacuum of space, we are forced to confront a reality that is far more terrifying than a simple impact. The terrifying outcome is not that 3I Atlas will hit us, but that it will stop. Think of the sheer cosmic audacity required to bring an interstellar mass to a halt in our backyard. If 3I Atlas reaches its predicted coordinates on December 30th and simply ceases its forward motion, it becomes a permanent fixture of our sky, a second moon that we did not ask for and cannot explain. This would break our collective sense of solitude. For thousands of years, we have looked at the stars and wondered if we were alone, treating the silence of the universe as a comfortable blanket. But a visitor that parks itself at the edge of our gravity well is not a neighbor, it is an observer. It is the cosmic equivalent of noticing a stranger standing perfectly still in your garden at 3 in the morning. They aren't throwing stones at your window, they are just standing there, and in many ways, the standing is much worse than the stone. As we analyze the spectroscopic data, we find elements that shouldn't exist in a natural formation, isotopes of bismuth, and stable forms of elements that usually decay in seconds. This suggests that 3I Atlas was forged in a hearth we cannot imagine, under pressures that would crush a diamond into dust. The scientific community is currently whispering in hushed tones about the Great Refraction, a phenomenon where light, passing near the object, seems to slow down by 0.004%. It is a tiny margin, a mere hiccup in the speed of light, but it implies a warping of space-time that should require the mass of a black hole. Yet, there it is, a small, dark shape drifting toward us, carrying the weight of an entire galaxy's worth of secrets. We must wonder if our ancestors saw something similar. History is littered with accounts of guest stars that appeared without warning and vanished without a trace, but those were usually supernovae, the violent deaths of distant suns. This is different. This is a quiet arrival. The humor of our situation lies in our insistence on using our best technology to prove we are irrelevant. We build billion-dollar mirrors to look at the past, only to find the future looking back at us with a cold, unblinking eye. As we move deeper into the evidence, we have to ask ourselves, if 3I Atlas is a mirror, what exactly is it reflecting? Perhaps it is not the object itself that is terrifying, but the realization that our tiny, loud world is finally being asked to justify its noise. The trajectory takes it past the orbit of Mars on December 24th, a silent transit across the red planet's dusty horizon. By the time it reaches the Earth-Moon system on the 30th, it will be visible to the naked eye as a pale, violet spark. It won't look like a threat, it will look like a jewel. But beauty in the cosmos is often a warning. A tiger's stripes are beautiful, yet you do not want to see them in your hallway. We are currently in the hallway of our solar system, and the stripes are becoming very clear. As we transition from the technical data of the present to the echoes of our past, we begin to see that this is not the first time the calendar has felt like a closing door. To understand the terror of the 31st of December, we must first understand the silence that precedes it. To truly grasp the weight of what awaits us on December 30th, we must turn our gaze away from the flickering monitors of the present and toward the weathered stone of the past. Imagine you are standing in the center of a vast, grassy plain 5,000 years ago. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. There are no city lights to drown out the heavens. The Milky Way is not a faint smudge, but a roaring river of silver light that defines the very boundaries of your existence. For the ancients, the sky was the only clock that never broke, a celestial mechanism of perfect regularity. But every few generations, the clock would skip a beat. Archaeologists have long been puzzled by the recurring motifs found in Neolithic cave paintings and Sumerian clay tablets, symbols of a dark sun or a traveler with three eyes. It is here that the name 3-Eye Atlas begins to feel less like a modern designation and more like a translation of a primal fear. In the ruins of Göbekli Tepe, there are pillars carved with intricate depictions of comets and celestial catastrophes that do not align with any known meteor showers of the era. These stones speak of a time when the sky changed its face, an event that coincided with a sudden, unexplained shift in human behavior. It was as if a shadow had been cast over the collective psyche of the species, prompting a transition from nomadic wandering to the frantic construction of permanent, fortified shelters. We often think of progress as a linear climb, but perhaps it is a series of responses to atmospheric trauma. If 3-Eye Atlas visited our neighborhood thousands of years ago, its departure might have left a lingering trauma in our DNA, a quiet voice that tells us to look up when the year draws to a close. The terrifying outcome of its return is the potential for a forced evolution, a sudden realization that our current way of life is incompatible with the scale of the universe. The ancients didn't just watch the stars, they negotiated with them. They built monuments like Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza to track the precise moment when the heavens would reset. There is a dry humor in the thought of a modern astrophysicist using a supercomputer to confirm what a priest in ancient Babylon knew by looking at a puddle of water. We think we are so advanced because we can name the atoms in a star, but the priest knew that the star didn't care about its name. On December 30th, 2025, we will reach a point where our names and our math no longer provide comfort. In the year 1066, the appearance of a comet was seen as an omen of the fall of kings. While we no longer believe that a ball of ice dictates the fate of a throne, we cannot deny that celestial events have a way of collapsing our grandest illusions. The 3-Eye Atlas object represents a bridge between the mythic and the material. As it draws closer, the gravitational anomalies mentioned by researchers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory suggest that it may be interacting with the Earth's magnetosphere in a way that mimics the aurora of the gods described in Norse mythology. Imagine the sky turning a deep, bruised purple, not just at the poles, but over the equator, over the skyscrapers of New York and the temples of Kyoto. This would be a visual confirmation that the barrier between our world and the deep dark has become porous. The terror lies in the loss of our planet's isolation. We have spent our entire history pretending the Earth is a closed system, a safe room where we can play with our toys in peace. But 3-Eye Atlas is the sound of a key turning in the lock. If the 30th of December marks the opening of that door, what comes through is not an army or a fleet, but a truth. The truth that we are not the masters of this domain, but merely the current tenants. Scientists like Dr. Avi Loeb have suggested that we should be looking for techno-signatures, signs of intentionality in the cosmos. If 3-Eye Atlas exhibits a controlled descent into our orbital plane, it is no longer an astronomical event, it is an encounter. The ancient skywatchers knew that when the guest arrived, you did not ask why it was there, you asked what it wanted you to become. As we sit in our modern rooms, listening to the hum of refrigerators and the distant sound of traffic, we are not so different from the people who huddled around fires in the shadow of the pyramids. We are all waiting for the sky to tell us the next chapter of the story. The evidence is deepening, the data is stacking, and the echoes of the past are growing louder. We are moving toward a cosmic perspective where the individual human life feels like a single heartbeat in a billion-year afternoon. But in that heartbeat, there is a sudden, sharp clarity. The transition is coming, and as the clock ticks toward that final Tuesday in December, we must wonder if we are ready to see what the ancients saw the moment the universe stops being a backdrop and starts being a participant. As we move into the third segment of our journey, the tone shifts from the echoes of the past to the cold, hard realities of astrophysics. Though even here, the reality feels more like a dream. To understand why December 30th is such a significant threshold, we have to look at the impossibility stack that 3I Atlas has presented to the global scientific community. Usually, an object moving through space follows a predictable conic section, orbit an ellipse, a parabola, or a hyperbola. This is the gospel of Kepler and Newton. However, 3I Atlas is performing what pilots call a constant velocity maneuver. It is maintaining a speed of precisely 42,702 kilometers per hour, regardless of its distance from the sun's gravitational well. This is physically impossible for a natural rock. It implies a propulsion system that does not rely on burning fuel, but perhaps on manipulating the very fabric of space itself. If you were to stand on the surface of 3I Atlas, assuming it has a surface and isn't just a dense knot of folded dimensions, you wouldn't feel the acceleration. You would feel a profound, unnatural stillness. As of early December 2025, the object has begun to decelerate at a rate of exactly 9.8 meters per second squared. For those familiar with earthly physics, that number should sound very familiar. It is the exact acceleration of Earth's gravity. It is as if the object is tuning itself to our planet, matching our rhythm before it makes its final approach. This is the kind of detail that makes scientists skip lunch and stare at blackboards until their eyes ache. There is a certain dry humor in the frantic energy of a laboratory versus the absolute, terrifying patience of the object in space. We are down here, buzzing like bees in a jar, while 3I Atlas slides through the vacuum with the grace of a silent predator. The most terrifying outcome of this deceleration is not a collision, but a synchronized lock. If the object enters a geostationary orbit on December 30th, it will remain fixed over a single point on Earth, most likely the mid-Atlantic ridge, effectively becoming a permanent shadow over our world. Think of the psychological impact of a second moon that does not move across the sky, but hangs perfectly still, day and night. It would be a constant reminder of our new status as a watched species. From a meteorological perspective, the presence of such a massive object in our near orbit would begin to play havoc with the tides and the jet stream. We are talking about atmospheric tides, waves of air, hundreds of kilometers wide, being pulled toward the object, creating weather patterns that have no historical precedent. The 3I in the name stands for the third interstellar visitor ever recorded, but it could just as easily stand for intelligent, intentional, and impenetrable. NASA and the European Space Agency have attempted to bounce radar signals off its hull, but the signals do not return. They are absorbed entirely, suggesting a surface that is a perfect black body, an object that consumes all light and radiation that touches it. This makes 3I Atlas the ultimate black box of the universe. We can see its effect on the stars behind it, a slight shimmering like heat rising off a desert highway, but we cannot see the thing itself. It is a hole in the sky. On December 30th, that hole will reach its minimum distance from Earth. If the what-if pivot of our story is that 3I Atlas is a probe, then we have to ask what it is probing. Is it looking at our technology, our biology, or perhaps the way we react to the unknown. There is a theory in astrophysics called the zoo hypothesis, which suggests that advanced civilizations leave us alone until we reach a certain level of development. Perhaps December 30th is our graduation day, and the most terrifying part of graduating is realizing that the real world is much bigger and much less friendly than the classroom. As we reflect on this, we must consider the sheer scale of the energy involved. To move an object of this mass across interstellar distances requires power outputs that dwarf the entire history of human energy production. We are comparing a candle flame to a supernova, and yet this power is being used with such delicacy, such surgical precision, that it hasn't even disturbed the dust on our moon. This is the quiet tension of the cosmic perspective. We are in the presence of a power that could erase us without a sound, yet it chooses to wait. It chooses to arrive on a specific day, at a specific hour. As we move forward, the human reflection begins to set in. How do we, as a society, prepare for a Tuesday that might never end? How do we sleep when we know that just above the clouds, something is slowing down, preparing to meet us? The air in our metaphorical observatory is colder now, and the monitors are showing a final approach vector that leads directly to the heart of our world. We are no longer just observers, we are the destination. If the atmosphere is the skin of our world, then history is its memory. And as we approach the final hours of December, those memories are beginning to resurface in ways that challenge our understanding of time itself. We have arrived at the fifth stage of our journey, the search for Three-Eye Atlas in the echoes from the past. To understand what might happen after the 30th of December, 2025, we must look at the anomalous strata found in the sedimentary layers of our planet. Geologists have long noted a strange thin line of iridium and microtectites that appears in the Earth every 12,800 years. Usually, this is attributed to a comet impact, such as the one that may have triggered the Younger Dryas cooling period. However, a new school of thought suggests that these markers aren't from an impact, but from a close approach. What if Three-Eye Atlas doesn't hit the Earth, but simply brushes past it closely enough to trade material? Imagine the sky raining glass beads, not because of an explosion, but because of a gravitational exchange. This is the evidence deepens phase, where we realize that the scars on our planet might not be from wounds, but from encounters. There is a dry humor in the way we treat the Earth as a static museum, forgetting that it has been a participant in a high-speed cosmic ballet for over 4 billion years. We are like tourists who walk into a grand ballroom and assume the music started the moment we arrived. In the libraries of the Vatican and the dusty archives of Alexandria's modern descendants, researchers are re-examining the three-eyed pillar texts. These ancient fragments describe a period where the stars did not wander, but stood as sentinels for 3 days. This aligns perfectly with the predicted behavior of Three-Eye Atlas on December 30th. If the object locks into a geostationary position, it would appear to the ancient eye as a star that has decided to quit its job and sit down. The terror for our ancestors wasn't the light, but the stationarity. A moving star is a natural thing. A still star is a god or a ghost. We must ask, if this has happened before, why don't we remember it more clearly? The answer might lie in the human reflection. We are a species with profound collective amnesia. We package our traumas into myths and our myths into fairy tales until the sharp edges are worn smooth. But on December 30th, the edges will be sharp once again. The three-eye in 3I Atlas might represent a recurring cycle of instruction, intervention, and integration. This is the what-if pivot that keeps astrophysicists awake at night. If the object is a legacy probe, it may be programmed to activate only when certain conditions are met on the ground. Think of the humor in the timing. We have finally reached a level of global connectivity where the entire world can watch the same event in real time. If 3I Atlas wanted an audience, it couldn't have picked a better century. But what if the terrifying outcome is that the object isn't here to talk to us? What if it's here to talk to the planet itself? There is a theory that 3I Atlas is a planetary pacemaker designed to jumpstart the Earth's magnetic field during periods of solar instability. Our Sun is currently approaching its solar maximum in the cycle ending in 2025, and the flares have been getting more aggressive. If 3I Atlas arrives on December 30th to shield us from a catastrophic solar discharge, the terror isn't in the object, but in what it is protecting us from. It's like being shoved into a storm cellar by a stranger. The stranger is frightening, but the tornado they are pointing at is worse. We find ourselves in a state of calm tension, waiting to see if our visitor is a guardian or a silent witness to our struggle. The scientific perspective here is one of humble observation. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope has captured images of the object's wake, and it looks less like a trail of dust and more like a folded wake in the vacuum, a ripple in the very fabric of the void. As you lie there, feeling the weight of the blankets, try to imagine the weight of that history pressing down on the present. We are standing on the shoulders of giants who saw these same violet skies and wondered the same things. We are part of a continuous story that is about to turn a very significant page. The transition into segment 6 will take us from the archaeology of the past to the cosmic perspective of the future. We will zoom out from our small, violet-stained world and look at 3I Atlas as it appears from the outside, a tiny, dark intruder in a sea of ancient light. The loop is closing. The ancient stones, the modern satellites, and your own heartbeat are all syncing up to the same countdown. December 30th isn't just a date, it's a destination. And as we arrive, we realize that the most terrifying thing about the universe isn't its vastness, but its intimacy. It knows exactly where we are, and it has finally decided to drop by. The air is still sharp, the stars are still blinking, and the visitor is almost here. The air feels thick tonight, charged with a strange, static energy that seems to hum in the very marrow of your bones. As we transition from the cold, mathematical impossibilities of orbital mechanics into the tangible reality of our own atmosphere, we must consider the physical presence of 3I Atlas as it enters our local space. Imagine the Earth not as a solid rock, but as a delicate, breathing organism wrapped in a thin, translucent silk of gases. On December 30th, 2025, this silk will be pressed upon by a weight it was never designed to carry. We often forget that space is not just up there, it is the ceiling of our house, and something is currently leaning against the roof. The first signs of the object's true impact won't be a flash of light or a thunderous roar, but a change in the color of the twilight. Meteorologists have already begun to note a phenomenon they call the violet shift. As 3I Atlas descends toward its geostationary lock point, the high-altitude ionosphere is being compressed. This compression causes the nitrogen and oxygen molecules to glow with a soft, persistent purple hue that lingers long after the sun has dipped below the horizon. It is a beautiful sight, Certainly, but it is also a signal that the protective layers of our world are being redistributed. In the dry, understated humor of the scientific community, some have called this nature's way of dimming the lights before the main feature. But what is the main feature? If we look at the data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, we see that the barometric pressure across the Atlantic has begun to oscillate in a pattern that matches the rhythmic pulses detected by the European Space Agency weeks prior. This is the human reflection stage of our journey, where the abstract becomes personal. You might notice that your pets are acting strangely, or that the birds in your garden have stopped singing their usual evening songs, opting instead for a heavy, expectant silence. They are more sensitive to the shifting gravitational tides than we are. They feel the pull of 3I Atlas as a physical sensation, a subtle vertigo that tells them the ground is no longer the only thing that claims them. The terror of this outcome lies in the atmospheric squeeze. As the object settles into its position, it creates a gravitational well that pulls the air toward it. This doesn't mean we will run out of oxygen, but it does mean that the global weather systems, the conveyor belts of heat and moisture that sustain our civilizations, will begin to stutter. We are looking at the possibility of a stationary supercell, a storm system that forms under the shadow of 3I Atlas and simply stays there, spinning for days, weeks, or months. The sheer physics of such an event are staggering. To have a permanent hurricane anchored to a point in space is to redefine the word disaster as persistence. Yet, in this potential chaos, there is a quiet, cinematic beauty. Imagine standing on a beach in the Azores, looking up through the purple haze at a dark, unmoving shape that occupies 10% of the sky. It would be large enough to eclipse the sun for hours at a time, casting a literal shadow over the ocean. In that shadow, the temperature would drop rapidly, creating a localized winter in the middle of a tropical sea. This is the impossibility stack, manifesting as a sensory experience. We are no longer talking about dots on a radar screen. We are talking about a physical alteration of the human environment. Historians will likely look back at the final week of December 2025 as the moment humanity collectively held its breath. There is a certain humor in the way we have spent decades preparing for the end of the world, through movies and novels involving explosions and giant lizards, only to find that the most terrifying outcome is a quiet, permanent change in the sky. It is not an ending, but a relocation. We are being moved into a new neighborhood of the galaxy, one where we are no longer the only ones with a front lawn. Dr. Avi Loeb has pointed out that if 3I Atlas is indeed an artificial construct, its arrival might be timed to a specific atmospheric threshold, perhaps our level of carbon dioxide, or the specific radio frequency noise we emit. On December 30th, as the object reaches its terminal coordinates, it may begin to scrub the atmosphere. Some theoretical models suggest that the object's surface, that perfect black body we discussed earlier, could act as a massive electrostatic filter. The outcome, a sudden, radical purification of our air. This sounds like a miracle, but for a species that has spent 200 years adapting to pollution, a sudden return to primal air might be a shock to our systems. It is the cosmic equivalent of someone walking into a dusty room and opening every window at once. It's helpful, but the draft is going to be cold. As you listen to the steady rhythm of your own breathing, consider how much of our identity is tied to the predictability of our world. We count on the sun rising in the east and the stars staying in their patterns. But 3i Atlas represents the great unpredictability. It is the variable that refuses to be solved. As we move into the next segment, we will look closer at the echoes from the past to see if there are any ancient records of the sky that stayed still. To understand the 30th of December, we must look at the times the sun allegedly stopped in its tracks for the ancients and ask if they were seeing the arrival of a previous visitor. The transition from the atmospheric to the mythic is a gentle one. We are all, in a sense, children of the air, and when the air changes, we change with it. The silence outside your window tonight might be the same silence that fell over the world thousands of years ago. It is a heavy silence, yes, but it is also a fertile one. In the quiet, we can hear the gears of the universe turning, and for the first time in a long time, we are invited to listen. We are moving toward a cosmic perspective where the terror is balanced by a profound, hushed reverence for the scale of the mystery we are about to enter. The collective dream of humanity is a strange and powerful thing, weaving together our deepest fears and our most soaring hopes into a tapestry of shared reality. The secret of UAPs and the silent passings of interstellar objects like 3i Atlas have for decades been a submerged but potent thread in this collective dream. Even for those who consciously dismiss the idea of extraterrestrial intelligence, the subconscious mind grapples with the immense implications, the lingering question of an unseen hand, guiding, observing, or simply existing beyond our immediate comprehension. This human reflection on the unknown creates a profound psychological tension within individuals and across societies. On one hand, there is the innate human drive for knowledge, the insatiable curiosity that built our telescopes and launched our probes. On the other, there is the primal fear of the other, the anxiety that accompanies the realization that we may not be at the apex of the cosmic food chain, or even at the center of our own story. The president's potential reveal is, at its heart, an attempt to forcibly resolve this internal conflict, to shatter the comforting illusion of human exceptionalism. Imagine the sheer scale of the information that would be unleashed. It is not merely the confirmation of alien life, but the potential disclosure of technologies that could entirely rewrite our understanding of physics, energy, and medicine. We are talking about anti-gravity, free energy, healing modalities that transcend our current understanding of biology. This is why the control of this information by a select few, as suggested by the Wilson Memo, becomes so profoundly important. The secret is not just about them, it is about us and the incredible power that comes with such knowledge. The three anomalies within the human reflection are particularly resonant. First, the anomaly of disbelief itself. Despite overwhelming military and radar evidence and official acknowledgements of UAPs, a significant portion of the population maintains a staunch refusal to consider the extraterrestrial hypothesis. This is a psychological defense mechanism, a way of protecting our established worldview from a truly disruptive truth. The second anomaly is the mythic link to the savior archetype. Whether it's the expectation of a divine intervention or a technological salvation, humanity often projects its deepest longings for resolution onto an external force. The president's potential reveal, framed as an act of courageous disclosure, taps into this very archetype, presenting him as the one who breaks the chains of ignorance and ushers in a new era of understanding. It is a profoundly human desire to be led out of the dark. The third anomaly is the concept of preparedness. For decades, science fiction, from H.G. Wells to Star Trek, has been priming our collective consciousness for contact. Movies depict everything from friendly visitors to hostile invaders, creating a vast, imaginative landscape for the human mind to explore. This cultural saturation means that while the shock of disclosure would be immense, the groundwork has already been laid. We are, in a strange way, already prepared for the impossible, having rehearsed it countless times in our stories and dreams. Think about how this relates to 3I Atlas. Its silent, clean transit through our solar system could be interpreted not as an indifferent passing, but as a subtle form of communication, a silent probe, testing the waters, assessing our reactions, without directly interfering. Perhaps it is a kind of cosmic Rorschach test, allowing us to project our own hopes and fears onto its enigmatic presence. The fact that it was classified first as a comet, then later re-evaluated, shows our own human struggle to fit the unknown into familiar boxes, to reduce the cosmic wonder to something scientifically manageable. The president's challenge, then, is to bridge the gap between our deeply ingrained cultural narratives and the stark, potentially overwhelming truth. The disclosure would not merely be an announcement, it would be a catalyst for a global re-evaluation of everything we thought we knew. Our religions would be recontextualized, our sciences would be forced to adapt, and our geopolitical structures would be fundamentally challenged. The old certainties, like the comfortable rhythm of the tides, would suddenly feel less reliable. This psychological impact is why the decision to disclose has been so carefully guarded for so long. The fear is not of alien invasion, but of human implosion, the collapse of our social, religious, and economic systems under the weight of a truth we are not ready to bear. But the rumor suggests that the time for that protection is over, that the political and societal pressure has reached a critical point where the secret can no longer be contained. This leads us to a crucial viewer cue. Where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it for you? Consider the sheer diversity of experiences, languages, and beliefs that exist on our planet. A presidential reveal would land differently in Tokyo than in Tehran, in New York than in New Delhi. The president's words, amplified globally, would initiate a conversation that spans every culture and every creed, forcing a collective confrontation with our cosmic neighbors. The Earth breathes, slow and steady, beneath the weight of this impending truth. The air holds the lingering scent of old questions and the promise of new answers. We are entering a phase where the human reflection on the unknown will no longer be an abstract philosophical exercise, but a concrete, unavoidable reality. The very concept of humanity as a singular, isolated entity is about to be challenged, and in that challenge lies both profound fear and immense opportunity. The story must now transition into the cosmic perspective, moving beyond the immediate human and political drama to consider the even larger scale of the universe and the timeframes of galactic civilizations. We will look at how this secret, once revealed, reframes our place in the cosmos and shifts our understanding of time itself. The president's shadow may be long on Earth, but it is barely a flicker in the vastness of the Milky Way. We may already be part of the experiment, and the next segment will explore what that truly means. I will now generate segment 7, adhering strictly to the required length of 1,500 words, deepening the narrative arc into the cosmic perspective and maintaining the established, soothing, cinematic, and scientifically poetic tone. To truly grasp the implications of objects like 3I Atlas and the technology described in UAP reports, we must pivot our focus from earthly concerns, the politics, the cover-ups, the elections, and embrace the cosmic perspective. This requires adjusting our internal clock from the fleeting minutes and hours of a human life to the immense, crushing scale of interstellar longevity. The long dark between stars is not merely vast in distance, measured in trillions of kilometers or light years, but vast in time. Imagine the process that created 3I Atlas. It was likely ejected from its home star system tens of thousands or even millions of years ago. It is a piece of cosmic dust that has surfed the gentle pressure of solar winds and the slow, gravitational tugs of the Milky Way's hundreds of billions of stars for a duration that predates the very emergence of modern humanity. The object arrived here, in our solar system, having already completed a journey that represents a staggering fraction of Earth's own geological history. This temporal perspective reframes the UAP technology entirely. If the objects we see in our skies are the craft of a civilization capable of launching objects like 3I Atlas, we are not dealing with a few hundred years of technological advancement. We are likely dealing with thousands or even millions of years of continuous scientific and engineering progress. A civilization that has survived for that long, overcoming its internal conflicts and the great filter of self-destruction, would possess a mastery of physics that appears utterly magical to us. The three anomalies that highlight this vast temporal gulf are compelling. First, the anomaly of material science, the ability of UAPs to withstand G-forces that would shatter steel and titanium, and the ability of 3I Atlas to survive an interstellar journey without breaking apart, suggests a level of material science that utilizes forces far beyond the simple binding of atoms. They are using materials designed for deep time and extreme stress. The second anomaly is the mythic link to timelessness. In almost every ancient myth, the gods are characterized by their immortality and their control over time and space. A civilization that can manipulate gravity and effectively jump between stars using warp drives or space-time bending technology has achieved a kind of functional immortality within the cosmos. They are not bound by the slow, painful march of relativity. The President's potential reveal is the sudden introduction of this functional immortality into our fleeting human timeline. The third anomaly is the anomaly of indifference. The UAPs, observed by military personnel, often appear to be observing our nuclear facilities, our test ranges, and our carriers with a cool, detached clinicality, like a scientist observing a microbial culture. They do not respond to our jets. They do not engage in communication, and they move with an utterly dominant ease. This indifference is the signature of a civilization that operates on a vastly superior timescale, where 100 years of human history is barely a second in their strategic planning. To look back at the origins of 3I Atlas is to confront this indifference directly. It came from the direction of the constellation Gemini, moving at 33 kilometers per second, and it was simply passing through. It was not coming for us. It was merely traveling, and we happened to be in the way. It is a profound, subtle dose of cosmic humility to realize that the subject of the President's ultimate rumored reveal the extraterrestrial presence may view our entire civilization as a slightly interesting, but ultimately minor, planetary occurrence. This massive scale is what makes the political conflict so quietly humorous. While politicians squabble over budgets and election cycles, matters that rarely extend beyond 4 years, the cosmic entities they are trying to keep secret have been functioning across eons. It is the sight of a small child angrily throwing a pebble at a slowly moving mountain, an act of utterly disproportionate effort. The President's potential reveal, therefore, is less an act of disruption and more an act of forced perspective. It is an attempt to catapult humanity out of its geocentric and temporal self-absorption and into the vast, humbling reality of the cosmos. If the knowledge is revealed, the Earth's problems, climate change, poverty, war do not vanish, but they are instantly reframed against the backdrop of an infinitely larger set of challenges and opportunities. We are approaching November of 2025, a time when the political rhetoric traditionally heats up, but the secret acts like a vast, cold object in the dark, warping the light of our ordinary events. The former president's decision to disclose, if the rumors are true, would be the only event capable of momentarily freezing the flow of ordinary political time, replacing it with a cosmic moment of global attention. The scientist we must consider here is the entire Set-I community, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. For decades, Set-I has listened patiently for an intentional radio signal, a loud declaration from another star system. The tragic irony, highlighted by 3I Atlas and the stealthy UAPs, is that the advanced civilizations may have long since abandoned noisy, polluting radio waves in favor of silent, efficient propulsion and communication systems that are entirely invisible to our current technology. Their message is not a signal on the radio. It is the silent, impossible movement of their craft in our skies. We were listening for a scream, but they were merely whispering a profound truth in a frequency we could not hear. This brings a gentle sense of calm to the terrifying scale. The universe is not aggressively hostile, but it is deeply indifferent. Its workings are subtle, its movements slow by our reckoning, and its secrets are held with an immense, quiet patience. You are listening now, and the gentle rhythm of my voice is a small echo of the cosmos's own deep, patient breathing. We may already be part of the experiment, an observational unit that is slowly, laboriously, trying to deduce the laws of the universe that the silent visitors have already mastered. The president's potential reveal is the moment the human timeline attempts to intersect with the cosmic one, but the story must now zoom back in, moving from the grand, quiet indifference of deep space to the tangible evidence of extraterrestrial material, the artifacts and metamaterials that are the very physical basis of the Wilson memo and the source of the deepest political secrecy. The cosmic perspective has given us the scale. Now we need the physical evidence that continues the profound unraveling. I will now generate segment 8, adhering strictly to the required length of 1,500 words, focusing on the evidence deepens through the physical artifacts and the concept of metamaterials. The rumors surrounding the former president's potential reveal are grounded not just in eyewitness testimony or fuzzy radar returns, but in the alleged existence of physical artifacts, pieces of metal, composites, and strange metamaterials recovered from crash sites like Roswell or others throughout the Cold War. This material evidence is the source of the deepest political secrecy and the central problem identified in the Wilson memo, the controlled study and attempted reverse engineering of technology that should not exist. This is where the evidence deepens into the truly tangible. Imagine holding a small, smooth piece of metal in your hand. It is feather-light, almost weightless, yet impossibly strong. It has been analyzed by the most sophisticated laboratories on Earth, using techniques from mass spectrometry to electron microscopy. The initial findings are always the same, and they are always stunning. The elemental composition is known, perhaps primarily magnesium, bismuth, and zinc, but the isotopic ratios are fundamentally and inexplicably wrong. An isotope is simply a variant of a particular element that contains a different number of neutrons. On Earth, all elements have a predictable, measurable isotopic signature based on the formation of our solar system and the specific nuclear processes within our sunday. When we analyze a rock from Mars or a meteorite from the asteroid belt, we can immediately verify its origin by checking these specific isotopic fingerprints. But the alleged metamaterials recovered from UAPs display isotope ratios that do not correspond to anything naturally occurring on Earth or in our immediate solar system. They are, quite literally, made of star stuff from another corner of the galaxy. This is the primary anomaly that drives the secrecy. It is one thing to observe an impossible craft in the sky. It is another to possess a piece of it that definitively proves its extraterrestrial origin. The ability to manipulate isotopic ratios during a manufacturing process suggests a mastery of nuclear engineering far beyond our current capabilities. A civilization that can, essentially, custom build its elements to maximize properties like strength, lightness, and thermal resistance. The three anomalies presented by this material evidence are the impossibility of the isotopic ratios, the layered structure of the metamaterials, and the technological leap the artifacts represent. The metamaterials are often described as having an impossibly thin, layered structure, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of layers of different elements stacked together, each layer only a few atoms thick. These layers are not bound by conventional chemistry, but by some form of quantum locking or engineered space-time geometry, allowing the material to exhibit properties not found in bulk materials. This brings us to the mythic link of the forbidden box, or the Pandora's box, the physical container of immense, disruptive power. The secret is held within a physical vault, and the president's ultimate reveal would be the equivalent of throwing open that vault for the world to see. The fear is that the knowledge contained within will be too much for humanity to handle, causing a psychological and social breakdown that could shatter our institutions. The very concept of a metamaterial ties back to the 5 observables of the UAPs. If a material can be engineered at the atomic level to react differently to electromagnetic energy, it could explain the low observability on radar. If the material is designed to withstand extreme thermal and kinetic stress, it would explain the ability of the craft to move through air and water at hypersonic speeds without burning up or disintegrating. The artifacts are the proof of concept for the impossible physics witnessed by the Navy pilots. The president's dilemma, fueled by these rumors, is whether he can responsibly release this information without triggering the very societal panic and corporate collapse the original keepers of the secret feared. The secret is no longer held by a benevolent government trying to protect its people. It is held by a powerful, entrenched, and profitable industrial military complex that views the technology as a proprietary, multi-trillion-dollar asset. We must remember the scientist, the late Dr. Stephen Greer, who spent decades attempting to force congressional hearings on the reality of UFOs and the existence of these extraterrestrial metamaterials. His efforts, and the testimonies of whistleblowers he presented, consistently pointed to a clandestine program running outside of congressional and presidential oversight. This is the unseen hand that controls the gate to the ultimate truth. The time marker here is the very slow pace of reverse engineering. If the artifacts were recovered in the 1940s or 50s, and we still only understand a small fraction of their functionality in the 21st century, it shows the immense technological leap involved. The years stretch into decades of slow, painstaking effort. The president's reveal would not only confirm the technology's existence, but also potentially expose the vast amount of taxpayer money spent in secret attempts to copy it. Let's gently pause for a moment of existential reflection. The Earth beneath your feet is rotating, and you are hurtling through space around the Sun at 67,000 miles per hour, a speed that would seem impossible without the comfort of gravity to hold you steady. You are already part of an immense, beautiful cosmic dance. The metamaterials are just another layer of that dance, showing us that the universe can achieve engineering feats that make our current science look like alchemy. The rumor that a former president holds the keys to this vault is perhaps the most fitting mythic link for our time, a narrative dominated by political confrontation and the breaking of norms. The cosmic truth is now inextricably bound to the drama of earthly power. We need to look beyond the immediate political sensation and acknowledge that the disclosure would be a gift and a curse, confirming our existence in the cosmos while simultaneously revealing the depth of the deception practiced by our own institutions. The evidence deepens with every confirmed radar track and every alleged piece of metamaterial. The story now must transition to echoes from the past, examining the specific historical moments and figures who tried to break the secrecy before, and how their failures paved the way for the current political crisis. The president's shadow is a new reflection of an old, persistent human struggle against the power of the unseen hand. I will now generate segment 9, adhering strictly to the required length of 1,500 words, focusing on echoes from the past and the figures who previously tried to disclose the secret, paving the way for the current political crisis. The weight of the secret is not carried only by the institutions and the shadowy contractors. It is carried, day after day, by the individuals who have come into contact with the truth and attempted to break the code of silence. These are the whistleblowers and the frustrated officials, the quiet voices whose careers and lives were often shattered by the immense pressure of defying the unseen hand. Their legacy is the foundation for the current political rumors, the evidence that the secret is profoundly real and profoundly difficult to contain. Imagine the sheer psychological burden on an individual, a decorated pilot, a respected physicist, or a high-ranking intelligence officer who knows for a fact that extraterrestrial technology is being suppressed, a technology that could revolutionize humanity. They are bound by oaths and security clearances, yet compelled by a powerful sense of duty to the larger truth. Their personal struggles are the true echoes from the past that give the president's potential reveal its moral gravity. One such figure whose echoes resonate deeply is Colonel Philip Corso, a former United States Army intelligence officer. In the late 1990s, he claimed in his book to have been directly involved in the process of seeding extraterrestrial technology recovered from Roswell into American industries. He alleged that he managed this secret program from 1961 to 1963 at the Foreign Technology Desk of the Army's Research and Development Section at the Pentagon. His testimony was not of flying saucers in the sky, but of the mundane, deliberate transfer of metamaterials and concepts like night vision, fiber optics, and integrated circuits into the private sector with the false pretense that they were newly developed American ideas. Corso's account, whether entirely factual or partially embellished, provides the framework for understanding the core anomaly of the cover-up, the technological leap that occurred after the Second World War. The sudden, explosive development of our modern electronics and computer science seems, in retrospect, suspiciously fast, like a civilization that received a massive, unexplained infusion of advanced knowledge. This technological anomaly of sudden, unearned progress is the quietest, yet most persistent, echo from the past. Another crucial echo comes from Canada. specifically the 9 years of work by Dr. Wilbert Brockhouse-Smith, a senior radio engineer with the Canadian Department of Transport. Starting in 1950, Dr. Smith was tasked with investigating UFOs for the Canadian government. He famously stated in a memo that the UFO problem was considered the most highly classified matter in the United States, even above the hydrogen bomb, and that the American authorities considered the subject a matter of extraterrestrial origin. His efforts were consistently hampered, and his findings were ultimately dismissed by the Canadian government. But his insistence that the secret was real and centrally controlled serves as a powerful testament to the global nature of the silence. The three anomalies presented by these whistleblowers' testimonies are the source of technological leaps, the transnational nature of the secrecy, and the consistent consequences faced by those who speak out. The mythic link here is that of the Cassandra, the prophet who speaks the truth but is never believed. The whistleblowers speak the truth of extraterrestrial technology, but their stories are categorized by the media and the public as fringe theories, a necessary psychological defense mechanism to protect the societal status quo. The president's hypothetical reveal would instantly vindicate these marginalized voices, rewriting their legacies from that of conspiracy theorists to that of prophets of the cosmic age. This is why the rumor holds such a powerful emotional resonance. It is the promise of historical justice for the many men and women whose lives were sacrificed to the maintenance of the secret. This enduring political secret ties back to the indifferent silence of 3I Atlas. The interstellar object passed through our solar system unnoticed by the vast majority of the global population, but it was detected, tracked, and studied by a select few. The contrast is profound. The cosmos is open and vast, but we live within an enforced earthly bubble of controlled information. The president's ultimate move is a highly dramatic attempt to pop that bubble and expose the world to the raw, unmediated light of cosmic reality. Consider a final, gentle reflection. The former president's office sits at the nexus of all these rumors and historical whispers. Whether or not he personally possesses the keys to the vaults, he represents the authority and the political will required to challenge the entrenched power of the deep state and the private contractors. His unique political position, unbound by traditional norms and capable of drawing massive global attention, makes him the ideal, if highly unlikely, candidate to finalize the whistleblower's legacy and fulfill the long-awaited promise of disclosure. The time marker of December 1st, 2025, which is often cited as a symbolic deadline for the end of the year's political maneuvers, becomes the quiet backdrop against which this ultimate drama unfolds. The Earth continues its journey, utterly indifferent to the man-made schedules and deadlines, but the human drama accelerates toward this point of potential reckoning. The story must now zoom out once more, moving from the echoes from the past to a deeper exploration of the cosmic perspective, examining the profound physics and the philosophical meaning of the interstellar visitors. We need to look at what the behavior of objects, like 3I Atlas, suggests about the ultimate goals and nature of the civilizations that built them. The human reflection on the whistleblowers leads us directly to the cosmic reflection on the observers themselves. I will now generate segment 10, adhering strictly to the required length of 1,500 words, focusing on the cosmic perspective and the philosophical meaning behind the stealth and silence of interstellar objects. The cosmic perspective demands that we move beyond the question of if extraterrestrial intelligence exists and move to the question of what kind of intelligence would possess the technology of silent, interstellar travel. As evidenced by 3I Atlas and the UAPs. The architects of silence must be understood through the lens of the Kardashev scale, a conceptual framework developed by the Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev in 1964 to measure a civilization's level of technological advancement based on the amount of energy it is capable of harvesting, utilizing. Imagine three distinct levels of cosmic power. A Type 1 civilization is one that can harness all the energy available on its home planet, all the solar wind, all the geothermal power, all the tidal forces. We, as humanity, are currently approaching Type 1, perhaps only 70 to 80% there, still heavily reliant on polluting fossil fuels. A Type 2 civilization can harness all the energy output of its home star, perhaps by building a massive, surrounding structure known as a Dyson sphere or Dyson swarm to collect every possible photon. A Type 3 civilization is capable of harnessing the energy of an entire galaxy, controlling billions of stars, and mastering interstellar travel. The technology displayed by the UAPs, the mastery of gravity, the manipulation of space-time to achieve transmedium and hypersonic silent movement, strongly suggests a civilization that is, at minimum, a mature Type 2, if not a Type 3. They are utilizing principles of physics that allow them to bypass the inefficient, noisy process of rocket propulsion. Their presence and the silent, probing nature of 3I Atlas indicates an intelligence that operates with an abundance of energy and a profound strategic patience. The three anomalies that define these architects of silence are their stealth, their efficiency, and their temporal awareness. Stealth is not merely a military tactic. For an advanced Type 2 or Type 3 civilization, it is a matter of cosmic maturity. Why announce yourself with loud radio signals that could attract the attention of less evolved, potentially hostile species, when you can observe quietly and efficiently? The efficiency is demonstrated by the slight, gentle acceleration of Oumuamua and the lack of a wasted energy plume on 3I Atlas. They are not burning fuel, they are utilizing the fabric of space-time itself to move, the ultimate form of clean, renewable energy. Their temporal awareness is perhaps the most humbling anomaly. A civilization capable of existing and planning on the Kardashev scale operates on a time frame of thousands of years. A human life of 80 years is a fleeting moment to them. The president's ultimate reveal, with its focus on the immediate political impact, is a Type 0 concern, a concern of a civilization still bound by the energy of its chemical and fossil fuels, and the short attention span of its election cycles. The mythic link here is the Watchers, or the Olympian gods beings who possess such vast power and longevity that they view the human drama with detached, philosophical interest. They are not malevolent, but their motives and methods are entirely alien to our own. The president's decision to disclose the truth is an attempt to force the human race to grow up quickly, to move from a Type 0 provincial perspective to a Type 1 planetary consciousness. We can tie this back to the alleged metamaterials discussed in the previous segment. If a civilization can manipulate isotopic ratios and build layered materials that defy conventional physics, they have achieved a profound mastery over matter and energy. This mastery is the very definition of a Type 2 civilization. The president's ultimate rumor is, therefore, a rumor about the transfer of power, the transfer of the keys, from a Type 0 industrial complex to the potentially Type 1 collective humanity. This realization brings a strange, quiet, calm. We are not dealing with little green men interested in our water or our precious minerals. We are dealing with architects who are interested in the physics of our star system the evolution of life on a Type G main sequence star's third planet, and our transition through the difficult adolescence of technological self-awareness. Consider the scientist Dr. Avi Loeb again. His persistent advocacy for a non-natural explanation for objects like Oumuamua and Three-Eye Atlas is not driven by sensationalism, but by a rigorous application of the scientific method to the Kardashev scale. He argues that the anomalies require an engineering solution, not just a geological or cometary one. The object's non-gravitational acceleration is the subtle signature of a Type II civilization's discarded probe or automated space buoy. The viewer cue at this time of quiet cosmic reflection is simple. What single piece of knowledge would you wish to gain from such a disclosure? Would you want to know the secret of propulsion, the secret of longevity, or the secret of what happens after death? Your desire is the human reflection on the cosmic perspective, a small voice reaching out into the long dark. The Earth continues its rhythmic rotation, a small, vibrant sphere of blue and white, and the air feels still and cool, heavy with the weight of the unseen. The president's role in this ultimate drama is less about disclosure and more about the orchestration of a new human consensus. He is the unlikely catalyst for our collective shift in scale. We may already be part of the experiment, and the next segment will explore the more immediate human reflection on what contact truly means, moving from the grand scale of the Kardashev classifications to the intimate reality of a global cultural shock. The story must now pivot from the architects of silence to the psychology of the receiver. I will now generate segment 11, adhering strictly to the required length of 1,500 words, focusing on the human reflection and the immediate psychological and sociological impact of an official disclosure. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of Three-Eye Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But Three-Eye Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave. Certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase, every scientist dreads, statistically improbable. which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3. I-Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare, and somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice, numbers hum the universe's poise. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object. No debris. No passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something, not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that. Pa." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looks strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing, a glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional. The kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like Well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids, not random, repeating, symmetrical, the kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects, artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3i Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3i Atlas aren't random. They're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing. Sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning. Like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field. Weak, but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3I Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning. The quiet compulsion to continue. The physics of persistence. The refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance. Like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, "and it remembered the lesson." As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response." The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the web's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the web, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the web brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas web pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the web. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas web had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it not for discussion. The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast, rumors cast, silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best. If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales. You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. We have reached the edge of the map, the place where the data streams end and the vast, unwritten future begins. In this final segment, we confront the ultimate meaning of the Great Silence, as 3I Atlas glides toward the heliopause, that invisible boundary where the solar wind finally yields to the pressure of the interstellar medium it carries with it, the last echoes of its brief residency in our world. By December 30th, 2025, the frantic activity of its approach has been replaced by a deep, resonant stillness. This is the echoes from the past coming full circle, as our present moment prepares to become someone else's ancient history. The impossibility stack of 3I Atlas concludes not with a loud revelation, but with a profound, quiet absence. The most terrifying outcome after December 30th is not what the object did, but what it left unsaid. It passed through our inner sanctum, brushed against our atmosphere, and altered the very rhythm of our seasons, only to retreat into the dark without leaving a manual or a map. This is the human reflection on the nature of truth. We often assume that the universe is a puzzle to be solved, but 3I Atlas suggests it is a presence to be experienced. The humor, soft and understated, lies in our expectation of a grand finale. We wanted a message in a bottle. Instead, we got the bottle, and we are still trying to figure out how to open it. From the cosmic perspective, we are now looking at the object as it passes the orbit of Neptune in the year 2030. At this distance, the Sun is just the brightest star in a cold, black sky. 3I Atlas is no longer a violet spark, but a dark shard of ice, indistinguishable from the trillions of other rocks in the Oort cloud, save for its relentless, hyperbolic speed. It is a mote of memory, a piece of our story that is now traveling toward the star Vega, arriving there in roughly 300,000 years. The Great Silence is not an empty space, but a storage facility for everything that has ever been. As we slow our pace and prepare to close this narrative, consider the continuity of your own life. You are a part of this story, a witness to the visitor's passage, tucked safely in the now, while the then drifts away. The air in your room is still, the world outside is resting, and the 3I Atlas object is finally home back in the boundless dark where it belongs. We are left with the silence, but it is a fertile silence, pregnant with the knowledge that we are not alone, only currently unobserved. The journey is over, but the wonder is just beginning. Our long journey with 3I Atlas has brought us from the frantic calculations of the observatory to the quiet, starlit reflections of the human soul. We have seen how a single visitor from another sun can reach across the void and remind us of our own fragility and our incredible capacity for wonder. It is a humbling thought, and perhaps a quietly funny one, that after all our technology and all our math, the universe still keeps its best secrets for those who are willing to sit in the dark and listen. We have honored the endurance of our species tonight, the way we have survived the cold and the chaos to become the storytellers of the stars. Our ancestors survived a primordial soup that might have killed us, yet they looked at the same sky and saw the same patterns we do today. History bends, as we have seen, but it never truly breaks. It simply expands to hold the weight of new discoveries. As you transition now from curiosity to rest, take with you the gratitude for this moment of shared wonder. The stars are in their places, the tides are turning, and the silence of the night is a warm blanket. History is still being written, and you are a vital part of its ink. Sleep now, for the universe is vast, timeless, and ever watchful. Good night.